The Phoenix Pencil Company is about a family of women who can bring back anything that has been written with one of their magical pencils. Worth it, or should you write this one off? Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop shop for all things audiobook. I'd like to take a moment and ask that if you enjoy my content, you click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and like the videos when you can. It really helps the channel. The Phoenix Pencil Company is an ambitious debut novel by Allison King. It follows several formats, conversations that take place in person, over text, via email, diary entries, and then an epistolary format too, where there are letters being written back and forth. Not in the traditional sense, though. It's a really interesting structure, and even though this sounds like it's a lot, it's done in a very clear way that doesn't get confusing, even though there's so much going on. The Phoenix Pencil Company follows Monica, a college student who has been raised by her grandparents. During one of her breaks, she goes home and learns from her grandfather that her grandmother's actually suffering from Alzheimer's. Now, she has a lot of emotions around this, some of which lead to her wanting to help her grandmother by caring for her alongside her grandfather, and some of it is just about wanting to learn as much as she can from her grandmother before it's too late. So Monica makes the decision to stay home and not return to college, even though college is also important for her. Also critical to the story is Monica's grandmother's cousin named Meng. Now, Meng is living in Shanghai, and Monica has never met Meng, but quickly Monica connects with someone who knows Meng because Monica's working on a sort of an ancestry DNA kind of site, and she meets a young woman named Louise, the same age as Monica, who's an acquaintance of Meng's. And in fact, Meng has given something to Louise to pass to Monica to give to her grandmother. And it just so turns out that's a pencil, one of the magical pencils that can be reforged by everyone female in this family. So things rapidly change for Monica, the self-proclaimed recluse. Suddenly she has this really good friend and confidant in Louise. She's dealing with the emotions of the potential of losing her grandmother. She's spending a lot more time at home. She's stepped away from college, and she's learning about her ancestry. So there's a whole lot going on for this young lady. For Monica's grandmother, the pencil company is literally in her blood. All of the women in their family can reforge pencils, which basically means they can bring back or conjure any of the writing that has happened with these particular pencils. The pencils do need to be special, but they've been making these pencils for generations. So you can imagine the social, political, and cultural implications of someone who's able to take a particular pencil and bring back anything it's ever said. Monica, at first, seems way more interested in learning her grandmother's story than the magic. There are a few ways in which I felt like this book bit off a little bit more than it could chew, but overall it was well done. Considering this is a debut from Allison King, I'm pretty impressed. Now, it's clear that she chose to write what she knows because Allison King is an Asian American software engineer turned writer. And Monica is a software engineer in our story. So clearly there's a little bit based on her own experience, but you know what? For a debut, go for it, lady. The book is narrated by 4 women: Carol Kang, Jody Long, Sarah Siu, and Crystal Yu. Comparatively, Carol Kang as Monica and Jody Long as her grandmother carry way more of the load than the other 2 narrators. But that's all right, because it's all about characters in this story, so we are hearing more from our 2 main characters. I really found Jody Long to be a standout in this cast. She narrates the grandmother's part, and in her Chinese accent, she is able to convey an unbelievable depth of emotion. And the grandmother really is, for the first time, reliving some very traumatic events of her past. So that was a really critical part. Now, Monica, Carol Kang, is sort of just your run-of-the-mill character, so as long as she sounds young and mildly intelligent, she's a good fit. But Jody Long really crushed this part. The novel really asks who inherits our stories. Which stories do we push forward to the next generation, and which stories do we let go? What I really enjoyed about this was that the focus was not on intergenerational trauma, although that's the nature of a lot of what's being shared. It was more on the effect of sharing these stories on the relationship between a grandmother and her granddaughter. So yes, there's trauma in the story, but at the same time, it's more about two people connecting through the passing on of the story than it is about, oh hey, look at all this trauma I had. So I really appreciated that perspective from Allison King. Understanding someone's trauma can clearly unlock a little bit more in your relationship. And I think that was exactly what Allison King was going for between granddaughter and grandmother here. Overall, I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Now, my expectations may have been a little bit unfair because, first of all, I made the assumption, not knowing anything, that this was about Phoenix, Arizona, not a bird that burns and rises again from the ashes. It's definitely the second one in this case. The phoenix being a huge metaphor for pencils that can write, and that writing can then be brought back later. So, smartly named. I also was operating under the assumption that this book was going to be just a little bit more about magic. It's magical realism, but there's a lot more realism than there is magic. I mean, it's there, don't get me wrong. But most of the magic worked for me. There was one part, which if you read, you'll understand, which is a secondary way of reforging that I just didn't find necessary in the story, and I think it added a dimension that I really didn't need to hear about. It didn't take away from the book, but it also kind of felt like, all right, these parts don't really matter that much to me. And I feel like as an author, I would choose to take those out, but I'm also not an author, so who am I to say? Even though I expected more magic, I really enjoyed the family dynamic in this story. The grandmother and granddaughter's relationship was really intriguing to me and made me feel sort of warm and fuzzy and made me think of my own late grandmother, but I really liked the way they interacted and the way they cared for and valued one another. Congratulations to Allison King joining the Reese's Book Club picks right out of the gate. And considering this is a debut, once again, I think we can expect big things from this software engineer turned author. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion. But thanks for listening to mine. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.